Said today that Russia has started firing ballistic missiles provided by North.
In a startling revelation that has shocked the international community. He said that Russia is the winner of the war in Ukraine. Russia and the West have been at odds over the crisis since it started in 2014. Many attempts have been made to reach peaceful agreements and ceasefires, but according to Macgregor, who has a thorough understanding of military strategy and geopolitics, Russia has emerged as the undisputed victor in this protracted and brutal conflict. In this in-depth analysis, we will examine Macgregor's claims and consider the implications of this unexpected conclusion to comprehend the significance of Macgregor's findings. Revelation: it is important to first understand the essence of the Ukrainian war. The international community strongly condemned Russia's annexation of Crimea in 2014. The pro-Russian separatists in eastern Ukraine then started an insurgency against the Ukrainian government, which resulted in a full-scale war that has since claimed thousands of lives, displaced millions of people, and left. Due to Ukraine's extreme division over time, there have been many attempts to put an end to hostilities, such as the Minsk agreements mediated by the Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe. Nevertheless, these efforts have only been partially successful, with periodic relapses of violence and little real progress made toward a long-term solution. Both sides continue to accuse one another of breaking ceasefires, which made the situation more complicated. Territorial accords. Retired US Army colonel and military strategist Douglas Macgregor is well known for his unconventional and controversial opinions on military affairs. He rose to prominence by criticizing US military participation in the Middle East and has been a strong supporter of reassessing America's military commitments around the world. Macgregor is known for questioning conventional wisdom, and his most recent evaluation of the circumstances in Ukraine is consistent with that. According to Wisdom Macgregor, Russia has largely succeeded in achieving its strategic goals in Ukraine. He cites the annexation of Crimea as a major triumph for Moscow, one that encountered little opposition from the West. He also emphasizes the de facto control that pro-Russian separatists have established in some areas of eastern Ukraine, further enhancing Russia's influence in the area. One of the factors that Macgregor highlights in his assessment: Western sanctions' effects on Russia. Although sanctions were first put in place in reaction to what Russia was doing in Ukraine, the sanctions, according to Macgregor, have ultimately failed to alter Moscow's behavior and have instead forced Russia to form new economic partnerships and alliances, decreasing its reliance on Western markets. Macgregor also claims that the sanctions have negatively impacted the economies of European nations. Additionally, because of their economic connections to Russia, European nations have been hesitant to fully implement sanctions. This reluctance has weakened the sanctions regime's efficacy and caused conflicts within the European Union. In addition, Macgregor criticizes US involvement in the crisis in Ukraine, claiming that US strategy has been erratic and unclear strategically. He cites the US's military assistance to Ukraine as an example of. Despite the fact that the US has given the Ukrainian government weapons and support, Macgregor contends that this assistance has not been enough to alter the balance of power in the region. Macgregor also doubts whether the US has a well-defined and workable plan for Ukraine. He contends that Russia has been able to influence events in the area to its advantage since there isn't a clear long-term strategy. This lack of strategic vision, in his opinion, has contributed to the current state of affairs. It is crucial to understand that any evaluation of the conflict in Ukraine must consider the human cost of the war, as thousands of people have died as a result of the ongoing violence, including military personnel and civilians. Families have been shattered, communities have been devastated, and the humanitarian toll of the conflict has reached thousands of. It is impossible to ignore the misery of the fighting. Millions of people have been forced to flee their homes in Ukraine and into neighboring countries, creating a complicated humanitarian catastrophe. While humanitarian groups have been working non-stop to give aid, many impacted by the violence still struggle to get access to basic essentials like food, shelter, and medical care. The issue is very widespread across the conflict. The RCA, along with the involvement of important players like Germany and France, has played a central role in these negotiations to bring an end to the hostilities and negotiate a lasting peace. However, progress has been slow and ceasefires have been repeatedly violated. Regarding Russia's success in Ukraine, Macgregor's analysis calls into doubt the efficacy of international intervention in such disagreements. The fundamental dynamics of the dispute have proved difficult to resolve despite the greatest efforts of diplomats and negotiators. This illustrates the difficulty in resolving conflicts with conflicting geopolitical interests. According to Macgregor, the resolution of the Ukraine war has important geopolitical ramifications since it indicates that Russia has effectively established its supremacy in the region's near. Additionally, the conflict in Ukraine has strained relations between Russia and the West, particularly the United States, and the European Union sanctions and counter-sanctions have become a fixture of this relationship. Russia has shown its willingness to challenge Western norms and institutions and has demonstrated its neighborhood. This has raised concerns among neighboring countries about Russia's intentions and its potential to use military force to achieve its objectives. Relationship in which the fundamental problems have not been resolved. Too much the consequences of Russia's success in Ukraine for the future of the nation itself are a cause for great worry. The persistent conflict has made collaboration on other global concerns, such as climate change and terrorism, more difficult. Ukraine is now severely split as a result of the fighting, with pro-Russian rebels controlling the eastern regions and reintegrating them. It will be very difficult to enter Ukraine and solve the grievances of the local populace. In addition, Russia continues to claim Crimea as its own, despite Ukraine and the majority of the international community rejecting this claim. It is evident how the Crimea issue may be resolved without escalating hostilities, and the Ukrainian government has reaffirmed its commitment to bringing about a peace. Finding a solution to the dispute and preserving its sovereignty are difficult tasks, as are political and economic changes. Following Macgregor's revelation, the international community urgently has to reassess its strategy for handling the Ukraine war in order to combat corruption and meet the needs of individuals impacted by the fighting. It is evident that the present approaches, since diplomacy and sanctions alone have not yielded the intended outcomes, a new strategy is required to handle the intricate web of geopolitical interest. One avenue for success is to participate in a more comprehensive and inclusive diplomatic process that incorporates all important parties, including Russia, Ukraine, the European Union, and the United States. This would entail addressing historical grievances and regional factors that have fueled the conflict. In addition to addressing the current problems of ceasefires and territorial disputes, such a process need to focus on addressing the underlying political, economic, and social elements that have fueled the war. Although Douglas Macgregor's claims are contentious and have sparked a great deal of discussion, his claim that Russia has emerged victorious in the war in Ukraine offers a sobering perspective on a conflict that has lasted for over 10 years. He categorically disregarded the persistent brutality. Macgregor's judgment is credible because of the sanctions' inability to influence Russia's behavior and the lack of a clear Western strategy. The conflict's human cost in terms of lives lost and towns destroyed serves as a striking reminder of the urgent need for a peaceful conclusion. The pursuit of international mediation must continue, and all parties concerned should be urged seek a diplomatic resolution that takes into account the fundamental grievances and goals of the people of Ukraine. The international community must carefully evaluate and respond to these developments with a thoughtful response because the geopolitical ramifications of Russia's victory in Ukraine go far beyond the region itself. They have the potential to change the dynamics of international relations and affect the behavior of other actors on the global stage. As Ukraine struggles to reconstruct and reconcile a divided society, attention should be paid to long-term stability and security. The international community must continue to be involved in and supportive of Ukraine's future.